If there's one stop motion app that I would always recommend to anybody who wants to get started in stop motion animation, then it would be Stop Motion Studio Pro. It has a ton of really cool features like green screen and rig removal, but if I could pick one feature that would be my favorite, it would be the amazing manual controls. However, these manual controls can be very confusing for beginners in stop motion. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how all the manual controls work inside of Stop Motion Studio Pro. So let's get started. Now, the first thing you're going to have to do once you're in Stop Motion Studio Pro is, of course, make a new movie. Now, once you make your new movie, it will probably look something like this. As you can see, it doesn't look very good right now. So we're going to go ahead and fix all of that. The first thing you probably want to do is just go to the settings, and then you want to go to the speed. Right here, you can set your frames per second. I would say for most beginners, you should always use 12. However, if you like, you can use 24. Basically, 24 frames per second is twice as smooth as 12 frames per second, but you also have to take twice as many pictures, so it takes twice as long to animate. So for most people, I just recommend 12 frames per second. Now next we'll head on over to the aspect ratio, and here you can choose between 16:9, which is the standard, and that's what I would actually recommend for most people. But if you want more of a cinematic style, you can choose the cinema mode, which is 2.35:1, or you can choose widescreen 1.85:1. Those are both more cinematic styles. You can also do sort of an Instagram style. It's a square basically. And then you can also do a portrait and a old TV mode. Now from here we can head on over to the resolution. It's this thing that says 4K. Now for most people, HQ will be fine, but if you want to get the best quality, you can go all the way up to 4K. Just know that this will probably take up a lot more storage on your phone, so you do want to keep that in mind. Now the next thing we're going to do is head on over to the camera section. So the first thing we're going to do is open the settings, and the first thing you should see is the camera. You can choose between a camera, green screen, or remote camera, and you can also choose between the rear and the front camera. I'm just going to keep it as the rear camera for now because that's what I want. Now in stop motion, you definitely want to use manual settings, so go ahead and switch it over to manual. Now you will notice that you suddenly have a ton more settings, and it becomes really confusing, but all you really need to do is go through them one at a time. First one you should go to is the white balance. This will really just determine what kind of color temperature your scene is. So most of the time you'll be using tungsten lights because those are the lights in most people's houses. The one that I like to use a lot is the daylight, and as you can see, that looks like it's giving me the most natural image. Now you'll also notice that it's very out of focus. To fix this, all you need to do is go to the focus setting and then drag the slider until your character or your object is in focus. The next setting is ISO. This is basically just the camera's sensitivity to light. Higher ISO will make the image brighter, but it also brings in a lot of image grain, which doesn't look very good at all. So you typically want to keep it as low as you can. So I'll probably take that to about 125 to 160. The next setting you should change is the shutter. To change the shutter, all you have to do is use this slider. And for stop motion, all that you really need to know about the shutter is that a higher shutter will be darker and a lower shutter will be brighter. Now I do want this to be more of a darker scene because it is inside of a jail, so I'm going to probably make it a higher shutter speed. Now the next setting I don't like to use a lot, and that is zooming, but sometimes it is necessary. As you can see in this camera, I actually have my phone on a tripod, and as you can see, I can't physically move it any closer. So I do have to zoom in a little bit. And once you're zoomed in, you might notice that it might be a little bit out of focus. So you can easily just go back to your focus setting and change that. Now, unfortunately, there is no control over the aperture. What the aperture does is it gives you control over how much background blur you have. However, I'm going to assume that the camera automatically chooses the lowest setting, which will give you more background blur. So that's probably good as it is anyway. Now you might be thinking, that's all the settings they have? Well, it is. And so if you want to get even more control over how your stop motions look, then go ahead and watch this video because lighting really is the most important aspect of stop motion.